Welcome back, Richard. It's good to see you again,
Good to be back.
and
Uh,
good to talk about to finish this conversation, or maybe not finish it, but continue our conversation that we started in the last podcast
right.
about sort of how we're managing the stress of our political, our cultural, the world that we're living in today.
Yeah, there's a chaotic, crazy upheaval that's occurring in our country, and we're all trying to manage it. And we wanted to take it on because this kind of chaos, as we said in a previous podcast, this kind of chaos and unpredictability and fear mongering and hatred and picking sides and being enemies with each other, all that has created enormous stress for everybody.
Mhm.
And it's the political climate is affecting us at an individual level, and our feeling is that we need to we must assume the responsibility for our own emotions. We have that obligation to manage our own emotions, even within the chaos and the fear and the anger.
Right.
And so, what we want to talk about today, we found this article by an associate professor from Syracuse University. I believe her name would be her last name. Her name is first name is Afton. I think it would be Kopczynski, is I think how she would say it. Not sure, and I apologize if I got it wrong. But she's an expert in this area. She writes a lot about family interactions and solving family problems and solving disagreements among people. And so she is an acknowledged expert in this area. And I think she gives really good advice in this article. She approaches it directly, and I think she has really practical and useful advice that we can all follow as we try to manage our own emotions amidst all the chaos, fear, and anger that we're all facing right now.
Absolutely. And so we'll talk about, as she presents, three responsibilities that we have. And I like the idea of, in the last podcast, we talked about looking at it from the macro and the micro level.
Mhm.
And I think another way to approach that is to look at whether or not the concerns that we're feeling and considering and debating is
Mhm.
whether or not it's healthy. I think that there is some level of healthy. Uh, this is going to sound very strange to say. It feels very strange to say. There is some level of healthy distress. There
Right.
are some things that happen in the world that it is very healthy to be distressed about it. Like,
Right.
we,
Fear and anxiety are probably good. I
yeah,
mean, it
you're
keeps you
adaptive.
alive. Right. You know where the danger is, and you know what you should avoid. So we have talked often about emotions on the podcast and said that emotions motivate us. They keep us safe.
Hmm.
They serve an adaptive function. So they inform us about what's going on, and they also provide motivation. But there's a tipping point
Right.
that if you have too much emotion, you hit that tipping point, and then you are dealing with stress and distress that can damage your physical and mental health.
Right.
And what we said in the previous podcast is that's our responsibility to manage and to monitor and manage so that we don't get to that tipping point. So the emotions that we feel are adaptive and not maladaptive.
Right. Because if we're not careful, the just the constant barrage of headlines, of news, of you used the word fear mongering a few minutes ago. The constant barrage of all of that we get with our 24-hour news
Right,
cycles
right.
can lead to feelings of helplessness and hopelessness and feelings of of fear that go beyond what is healthy. It goes beyond, what we can adaptively cope with. We
Hmm.
get to a point where, in the last podcast, we talked about dysfunction. It leads to that dysfunctional pattern where we are just not making good decisions. We are not able to see things for the way that they really are, and it leads to bad decisions.
That's right. We have this internet, we have this social media. There are thousands of people, literally thousands of people in Washington, D.C. right now, churning out chaos. I mean, that's what they were asked to do.
Right.
We want to destroy things, we want to break things, we want to change things. You will never keep up. You
Right.
cannot possibly keep up with how quickly this stuff is done 24 hours a day. These people, there are people working in DC in the executive branch who work at night. There are people churning this stuff out constantly. There's no way that you can possibly keep up with everything.
Right.
So what it means is you have this constant barrage of negative information, of anger, of fear, and it's coming at us, that drinking out of a fire hose,
Right.
that metaphor that people use. You cannot keep up with it. So she's saying, you get it creates feelings of helplessness and hopelessness. This fire hose of decision making. And so what she advises is you have to narrow your focus. You have to stop trying to embrace, understand, manage, deal with everything and make it manageable for you. We talk about you have to take care of you.
Right.
First of all, focus on yourself. Focus on your life, on your emotions. That's the first thing you should do. Second, focus on just a few issues that really matter to you. You can't keep up with vaccines and the Smithsonian and tariffs and taxes and Social Security. You can't keep up with every department in the United States in the executive branch of the government. That's just one branch. There are courts and there's a legislative branch. You can't begin to keep up with everything. So narrow your focus. First of all, put yourself first. Think about yourself, manage yourself. And the next thing is just deal with a couple of issues. I
Right.
don't know anything about the stock market. And when people talk about it and talk about percentages and 4%, there's no point in me listening to that because I don't understand it. And all it's going to do is keep me in turmoil. So narrow your focus to what's really important to you. And
Mhm.
then the third thing she advises is you limit social media
Right.
by purposely engaging in other activities. We call that replacement. Okay.
Right.
Um, don't sit at the computer, don't sit at your phone, don't listen to the news hour after hour after hour after hour. Replace that with something with activities that are engaging for you.
Right.
Okay, replace all the negative tsunami, this negative tsunami coming at you 24 hours a day. Replace some of that with engaging activities that are important to you.
Right. And that will help with with stress. That will help with lots of other things. Just by engaging in activities that you enjoy, that relieve stress, that just make you feel better.
Right.
Another thing that she talks about in this article is the idea that the issue of navigating difficult conversations. And again, we kind
Mhm.
of alluded to this a little bit in the last episode, but you know, we we manage relationships. There's a library full of books just on relationships, right?
Right.
How partners should talk to each other. There's another library of books on business relationships and how business partners should talk to one another and work with one another. We don't there are not many books, if any, about how we should talk to each other when we have such differing political views.
Right. Right.
But we don't I don't think that is very really any different. You
No.
approach these conversations with the idea that like I don't think that anybody that I talk to who has differing political views than I don't think that any of them are talking about it and have the intent of dismantling and destroying the United States. I don't think that anybody my I have family members who are almost directly opposite of me as it relates to almost every political perspective.
Mhm.
But they love America. They have no desire for the United States to fail. They have no desire for the United States to fall apart and crumble and come apart at the seams. They have no desire for you know for states to separate and become independent countries or anything. They don't want any of that stuff. They are approaching it from the idea that they feel like this is the way that the country should be. And so I have to keep that in mind when I'm talking to them, because otherwise I'm going to approach any conversation with them from the idea that they want to hurt me or they want to hurt
Mhm.
my people, the people that I care about. And it's just typically it's not true, you know?
Mhm.
And so when we approach these difficult conversations, I think it's important to approach them the same way we would any conversation with our partner or with someone that we care about. Approach it from the perspective of information gathering, information sharing. I'm not going to change your mind, or at least I can't go into a conversation with the intent that I'm going to change your mind or else. We're
Mhm.
not going to get anywhere with that.
Right,
Let's have a
right.
conversation and see if we can find some common ground.
Hmm. Yeah, you're right. We're not enemies.
Right,
Despite what and I'm angry. I don't mind saying I am disgusted with elected officials who run campaigns by turning us against each other.
right,
That's not, that's unfair and it's just destructive. We are not enemies.
right.
We are, on our currency, don't we have e pluribus unum?
Yeah,
From many one, okay, from all of us, but we're one people. I'm not your enemy. We might disagree, but I'm not your enemy. I don't want anything bad to happen to you. And I
right,
don't think you want anything bad to happen. I hope you don't want anything bad to happen to me. We probably disagree on some things, but we've always had disagreements. I mean, the founding fathers had disagreements. So we have to stop thinking in terms of winners and losers. When we're having conversations, and it's the second point, navigating, we have to learn how to navigate difficult conversations. That's the second thing that this professor advises us to do. If we're thinking in terms of I have to win or you have to lose, no,
right.
this is not about winning and losing.
Mhm.
Nobody has to lose here. Okay. We're all in this together. I'd be willing to bet that most of us would like for our schools to function the same way.
Right,
I don't think anybody wants chaos. I think most of us would say we want orderly classrooms where the teacher is respected and learning occurs. I don't think anybody disagrees with that,
right,
regardless of what color you are, black, red or blue, or where you live, whether you're north or south, east or west, coast or interior. I think most of us want our schools to function a certain way. We may disagree on how to get there. I think we all agree. What our obligation is in a conversation is not to convince you of anything. It's to understand. Help me to understand why you feel the way you do. And I'm sure we can reach some agreement.
right. Yeah, it's I'm going to use the word disgusting. It is
Mhm.
disgusting when you see political ads or politicians talk and they say such horrible things
Mhm.
about people who just disagree with them.
Right.
There are a lot of people who disagree with me
Mhm.
about name it, everything. Um, but I don't think that they're disgusting people. I don't think
No.
that they're despicable people. I don't
Mhm.
think that they are evil.
Mhm.
And again, I'm using words that politicians are using when talking about people from the other side of the aisle.
Right.
Evil. Evil was a word frequently used during last year's campaign season.
Mhm.
Evil. No, no one I'm sorry, no one in Washington is evil. They have differing views. They
Mhm.
may have different motives, different intentions, different desires for things, different approaches to reach the same conclusion that we
Mhm.
want to reach,
Right.
evil.
Hmm.
I mean, think about what it does to us viscerally. You know,
Right.
you can feel it in your body when you're talking to somebody, and if you see that person as evil, you
Hmm.
there is no way to ignore the change in the way that your body feels when you feel like you're talking to somebody who's evil.
That's right. When you use language like that, it turns a person into an object.
Right. Absolutely.
Once you move from personhood to using words like evil, they don't deserve to be here. Once you put them in that category, you turn them into an object. It's easier to kill an object than a person.
Right. I
And
was going to
that's
say
what
it's
you,
easier to kill them or it's easier to send them to an El Salvadorian prison
right.
and just say, you know what, that they deserve it. Even even when the Supreme Court says, no, they probably shouldn't have been sent there.
Hmm.
But you know what? Hey, they had this tattoo.
Right. Right.
So they should have been. And it's easy to do that when we remove them and we make them a thing.
Hmm. Hmm.
They're
When you turn them
evil.
into
They're
yeah.
bad. They're going to,
Right.
this is what they're going to do to you. This is what they are going to do to you. So
Right.
see how safe you are now that they're gone.
Right. They're your enemy. These people
Right.
are your enemy. Well, I don't think they're my enemy. I really don't think they are our enemies.
Right.
Okay. I
And
think most of the people,
as long as we hold on to those kinds of feelings about it and we see each other in those ways,
right,
it just keeps that fear and that stress at such a high level that I don't know how we could continue to cope with it.
right.
You
And
know?
so what I think she's asking us to do in this second responsibility is don't add to that
Right.
by thinking that your position is better. I think I'm absolutely right about everything.
Right.
Most of us do.
Right.
Okay. But I can't keep pushing my narrative. I can't keep pushing mine because then I'm just adding to the problem. I
Right.
become part of the problem, not part of the solution.
Right.
I did not know that this existed. There's a wonderful program. We get it here in the afternoon on Saturdays called This American Life.
Mhm.
And apparently, she mentioned this in her article, is there's an example of this type of dialogue where we try to understand each other. This American Life, episode 854, 10 things I don't want to hate about you. And I think that I'm going to go listen to it. I'm going to go dig it
Yeah.
out. So I'm going to listen to it today. Didn't know it existed. I usually listen to This American Life
Mhm.
um, because they're really interesting stories. I missed this one. I'm going to go back and take a look at it. I think there in within that episode is the kind of information I'm looking for to navigate better these conversations so that I'm not contributing to this breakdown of
Right.
communication.
Absolutely.
And
Now,
then,
the third responsibility that she mentions is
yeah,
that it is our responsibility, and I completely agree that
mhm,
we have to find healthy ways to cope with all of these feelings, feelings
right,
of grief, feelings of anger, feelings of hopelessness, feelings of
mhm,
helplessness. We have to find healthy ways to cope with this.
right,
Um, the more that we obsess over it, the more that we obsess over things that we can't control, the more dysfunction we're going to experience.
that's right.
Have to
Mhm.
find a healthy way to cope with this stuff.
That's right. And one of the ways she recommends doing that, she said, don't keep fussing over what you can't change or control or even understand.
Right.
Okay. She says, commit to meaningful engagement in your real life with real people. You have a life, you have relationships, you have work relationships, you have family relationships. There are real things going on in your world with real people. And what she advises is you spend more time there than you do trying to swallow all the social media that's flooding your devices every day. Just spend more time in this place rather than obsessing over these things that you can't do anything about.
Right. Right.
Okay?
And we also have to manage things, and these are things that folks we have talked about in
Hmm.
multiple podcasts. You know, calming your body, calming your mind, taking care of yourself with healthy, making sure you're getting enough sleep and that you're eating well and that you're
Hmm.
you're exercising and doing all those things. You have to take care of your mind and body because that helps you manage the stress and
That's
manage all this frustration.
that's right. Calm your body to calm your mind. We are all stressed right now for a number of reasons. Some are politics, some are financial.
Mhm.
We're all stressed. We're all struggling. But you have to calm your body in order to calm your mind. You have to do both. And you have that obligation to keep yourself together.
Right.
The third thing she says is to use gratitude to balance negativity.
Yeah.
We did a podcast a few weeks ago and we talked about having a gratitude list.
Mhm.
Get up in the morning and or before you go to bed at night, if you're having trouble sleeping, do your gratitude list.
Right.
Force yourself to think about the good things that are happening in your life and
Mhm.
move away from the negative things that are happening in your life. Well, that goes for this too. Uh,
Mhm.
Keep your gratitude list, keep it up to date. Spend a little time on your gratitude list and a little less time trying to figure out what in the world's going on in Washington, D.C.
Right. And just to avoid adding to the polarization,
Yeah.
again, sometimes, we all have sometimes we all have these tendencies. Sometimes we all have these family members, these friends, these people that we know who
Mhm.
who seem to just say things just to get a reaction, just to um,
Mhm.
polarize people. And so just avoid that. Those are unnecessary
Mhm.
additions to these feelings of stress and grief and frustration. So
Right.
avoid that because it's not going to get you anywhere positive.
We all have strong feelings. We don't have to spout them. We all know we all have strong feelings about these things. So, but try not to add to the polarization. I mean, and so um, keep yourself contained so that
Right.
you're not adding to the problem.
Yeah.
Now we have a couple of editorial comments. As we try to think through this stuff, the U.S. might. A lot of people think that we're already headed over a cliff. We may be headed into an abyss from which this country will never recover. I mean, there are strange things happening right now, but we don't know that.
Right.
We survived a civil war.
Right.
That was worse than this. We don't know what's going to happen. So there's no point in assuming worst case scenario.
Right.
Is it bad? Yes. Is it chaotic? Yes. Is it frightening? Yes. But we don't know where this is going to end up. We've survived other crises. We've survived depressions. We've survived wars. We've survived buildings being blown up. Will we survive this one? We don't know. There's no way to know how this is going to end up. But there are solutions.
Yeah.
There are solutions that we can work on ourselves, and there are solutions that the country can begin to work on. Okay.
Yeah.
They're going to require cooperation. They're going to require negotiation. Um, there was a magazine, probably before your time, Bernie, called Cosmopolitan.
Oh, I remember that.
And Helen Gurley Brown was the editor of Cosmo for a long time. And she had a famous phrase, and she would tell women, you can have it all the time. And that was sort of their motto for the magazine. Nobody gets to have it all the time. It
Right.
just does not, whether you're in a family, whether it's a marriage, a family, a city, a state, nobody gets to have it all the time.
Right. And I think it's important, that we recognize and hold fast to the idea that running a country, running running an organization even, but certainly
Right.
running a country
Mhm.
it's not like an athletic competition where there's winners and losers. That
Right.
that doesn't benefit us in any way.
Right.
I remember a professor in graduate school said, in light of something like this, he says, there's not a mental illness line at the grocery store. And what he was saying is that we all have to live together.
Right.
We are all sharing the same space. And if we're running things as though there's winners and losers, we're creating a divide that can't exist because we can't live in a world where all the winners live over here and all the losers live over here and there be any continuity, that there's peace. So we have to be cautious that we don't, continue to promote this idea that, well, there's some of us are going to win, some of us are going to lose, and I just want to be a winner. And so I'm going to, clean myself away from everyone else that could get in the way. A country can't survive that way. It just
Right.
can't.
Yeah, imagine if the United States was a country where half of the people felt that their voice didn't matter, that nobody cared about them. That's not a healthy place to be. I mean, that's not how you run a country. This is not the Super Bowl. This is not the Olympics. This is not an athletic competition where we're going to have a winner and a loser. That just you cannot run a country that way because the losers eventually are going to rebel. As the group of losers increases, they're going to rebel against the winners. I mean, that's just the way these things work. The other thing is that I think in the chaos, I think we've forgotten that there is this thing called the Declaration of Independence. This struck me the other day. I was thinking about the founding fathers and what they intended and how difficult it was for them to hammer out this agreement that
Mhm.
we call a constitution. But the Constitution is based on the Declaration of Independence. The Constitution was simply the roadmap that we used to achieve the ideals in the Declaration of Independence.
Right.
And I think we've lost our way as a nation. And I'm not blaming anybody in particular, but I think we've lost our way.
Mhm.
The Declaration of Independence was an eloquent document that changed everything in 1 year. Um, but the concept of the Declaration of Independence is that all men are created equal. We all know that. But the rights that we have come from the Creator. That's the word he used, that Jefferson used, endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. In other words, nobody gives these to you. Nobody, no person grants you these rights of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. They're endowed. You have them because you were born. Okay. And I think we've sort of forgotten that in this political climate, only the people who voted for me have rights, have these privileges. Okay. No, that's not how it works. Whether I vote for you or not, I have these. I'm entitled to these. That's what our country was founded on, is that everybody has these rights. Not some people, but all people. All people we all have a First Amendment right.
Right. And,
Not
and
some people.
and it doesn't even differentiate between citizens and non-citizens. It
It
says
says
everyone.
all men. It says everybody.
So and again, that gets into in just hearing us as we're talking about it, you can hear how politicized even some of these words are.
Right.
Um, and how, how sometimes these words are used to sparsed in particular ways to have this meaning or that meaning or to support whatever it is that we want them to support. And so, you know, be mindful of where you are, what those emotions are, what you're feeling, what you're experiencing. Be mindful about how you may or may not be contributing
Mhm.
to the discord, to the conflict, to the polarization of everything. And try to minimize, just be effortful in minimizing that negative influence because, we are just beginning. You mentioned, on last time's podcast, we're only a few months into this current administration, and there's no reason to believe that some of the dynamic changes are going to slow down. There's
Right.
no reason to believe that that's going to stop. And so we have to find a way to cope with it in a manner that's healthy, in a manner that's going to prevent us from falling into chaos any farther than we already are.
That's right. Things can individually we can fall apart in a hurry. I mean, people are talking about self-harm. People are talking about moving to another country.
Yeah.
People are thinking about drastic measures,
Mhm.
but what they're thinking about is how do I manage my emotions? What do I do with all these emotions? Do I
Right.
move? Do I do self-harm? Do I start drinking? Do I give up? How do I deal with my emotions? That's what this is about, is
Right.
how do I deal with my emotions in a healthy, adaptive way?
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the only reason somebody wants to move away out of the country is because that is the only way they see to manage their emotions. So, all right. I
Exactly.
think that is it for today. We will probably tread into these waters again in the future to talk about more more of these issues. And so we do hope to hear from people who listen to the podcast and have their own thoughts and everything. And hopefully we don't get a lot of hate messages about
No, it certainly wasn't intended to make things worse.
right.
Okay.
Because our goal is just be aware of where you are, and it's okay to think and feel and believe differently. It's just we don't have to fight about it. We don't have
No,
to
no,
have
we
the
don't.
stress about it.
Yeah, we're not enemies. We're not. We don't. We're not enemies. I. I
Yeah,
wish we could move. I wish we could move beyond that.
right. No one's evil. So,
Mhm.
all
Right.
right. Well, that's it for today. Until next time, stay happy, stay healthy, and forget to be afraid.